whole time. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you. And Jerry, heroic work there. Thank you.
Okay. So whether or not you were with us, I think this session will be, can we close that? Yeah, they're closing it? Okay. What we want to talk about is facilitating resilience and improving outcomes through developing a collaborative plan for working with children, adolescents, young adults, their families, their communities, in your own treatment setting, looking at goals, tasks, and actions. Okay? So I'm gonna remind you, and this goes back for those of you who were in the first session, we talked a little bit about this quote, "The thing that hath been is that which be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun." We need to recognize that there is a whole history of treatment, attitudes, research, and that our clients might be best served by our humility and our readiness to integrate things that are tried and true and may not be comfortable for me or you as a therapist or a facilitator, and proven to work across time as we develop and grow to address current challenges. You know, I've often been in the position of saying to facilitators or clinicians, is your plan what's best for you or what's best for your client? Because that comes up. You know, this is what way I'm comfortable. You know, maybe our humility is really important. Whatever our individual practice, most of us consider the multifactorial nature of challenges facing our youth. We explore each level of biopsychosocial, spiritual, cultural, and environmental factors. So we're looking, and some of you saw this slide, this is the only two we're repeating. Developmental history and life cycle. Where are they in their life cycle? Family and intergenerational developmental history, including previous trauma and unresolved losses. Individual, family, and intergenerational health and mental health history. Relational history, including attachment or ruptures in attachment. Family and community resources that are available, including nutrition, education, housing, safety, etc. Family spiritual history and current beliefs. Culture of the youth, family, and environment. The influence of transitions, including displacement, loss, and trauma. Family and community attitudes toward youth, positive or negative predictors. And going back to resources, were you going to say so? I'm sorry. Going back to resources, one of the things that I really picked up, and in the first session we talked a lot about history, one of the things Hippocrates talked about is sometimes recovery is not based on individual desire to recover, but the opportunity, being given the opportunity.
And we know from current research that it's the push from family and friends. So what I'd like you to do is just think about our Romanian example in terms of each of these. Just for a minute or two, just think about what you would have found with that Romanian community, or any disadvantaged community anywhere in the world. Right? And how that would have affected the decisions that the community is able to make, and how important it was for them to partner with the people across the track. If they had been left on their own with this, would they have been able to come up with a solution? Would they have been able to fix it? Right? So I think, for me, it's such a reminder that whether we're working with an individual, a family, or a community, that we have to widen our lens to be able to look at what is the context, what's going on socially, culturally, and practically, to be able to come up with the best possible solutions. And even if we choose to go back and work with the individual, that widening the lens and looking at the rest in our assessment allows us to work with pinpoint accuracy and resources in the area that needs us.
So we're going to do another small group discussion. We want you to break up into small groups and review, and I'll put that other lens back up while you're doing it, what might be useful to you in your own practice or your program. Develop a collaborative plan for integrating the combined knowledge of our industry to work with children, adolescents, and young adults and their families in your own program or practice. And focus also on how you can integrate professional and support communities, natural support communities. And again, what I'd like you to do is spend some time, really dig into this in small groups, redivide up, one person be the reporter, and we will explore what we come up with. Okay?
I would say 5 to 6 in a group, but whatever you like.
Yeah. I don't know why you're interfering with it again.
The next slide with the task. You want the task?
Okay.
So you're looking at what's going to be useful to you and develop a plan for integrating whatever knowledge and skills there are in your little group. Okay? And how you're going to bring in professional and support communities. And you're going to consider each of those. Which slide do you want left up? I'm sorry, I can't leave both up. This one. Everybody agree? Great. We're dealing with youth, so it's either an adolescent or a young adult, and we're looking at what skills, what tools that we've covered over the last, during the morning, are you going to bring in to do the assessment, the treatment, what's tools, what resources, what people, because you're groups of people who don't really work together. So what do you all bring? We've really looked at what comes in from the field, from different fields. Well, what do you bring together from your fields, right? Do you bring in an educational view? Do you bring in a fundraising view? Do you bring in therapy, analysis? What does each group bring to this that is going to help them work with adolescents, young adults? No one specific, but how are you going to pool your resources, your skills, your knowledge to be able to design assessment, treatment, prevention? You can choose whether you're doing prevention, early recognition, assessment, treatment, or all the above.
What resources do you need to find outside of your group?
Right.
Okay? Clearer?
Okay. And if you want to make bigger groups to have more resources, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm going to get. How are you all doing? So no, it's fine. What I'd like to do now is you have a 15-year-old from a different culture from the predominant culture, referred to your, whether it's your practice, your service, with using marijuana, alcohol, and suicidal. So does that change anything that you're currently doing? Let's have the reporters up here, please. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Go up. So reporters up at the mic, please. 3 of you? Great.
One at a time? Yeah, sure.
Yes. Okay, there you are.
You need to do it in this microphone.
Right, so I guess we were sort of talking about what the current barriers are. So the majority of our team have got operational experience across the UK, and then we've got Netherlands and the Turkey. Then we're sort of trying to understand, if we're a young person, what are the barriers to getting this seamless care that we have mainly in the UK as we stand now. So we were kind of thinking, if what we wanted to do or create was an approach that would negate the need to have 5, 6, 7, 8 different assessments, triages, recovery plans, different progress reviews. So the family are being stretched left, right and centre to attend. Families can't attend because they're looking at, well, if somebody's working with mental health, how do I prioritise my mental health assessment and care review against my substance misuse or social care impact? So we wanted to create a system that would have one assessment, one computer system that would negate the need for competition against different services. I think something we were really conscious of is that at the moment, with all the goodwill in the world, all the practitioners on the ground floor want to make the difference for young people and their families, but you're competing against that many different commissioned services, different funded services with that many different standalone targets that make that really difficult. So a commissioner might turn around and say, well, go and co-locate. Well, you can co-locate in a building all you want, but if the service and the spec are different, you won't get that joined up care. So I guess what we were trying to say was it would be really nice to have a commissioner who would be brave enough to commission something that would be a hub. So you could have one assessment, you could have one tool, you could have one care coordination approach.
Absolutely.
So that was kind of where we were thinking that you could have your interventions under one roof. So when you said about, oh, you've got somebody who comes from a different cultural background, who's got suicidal well, it wouldn't make a difference then, because you would have the care team there that would be able to, you'd get a care coordination approach within one roof. So that's kind of where we were getting at, because then you could build all your ACEs informed assessments, trauma informed, you could build everything into that assessment tool. But I think at the moment, how things stand, it's really difficult to do that, because like I say, everybody wants to, but then you go, well, my commissioner says I've got to hit this target, and then the young person focus goes out the window. It doesn't, because what I mean is,
because
you've got to do this, that and the other.
But
So
that's fabulous.
I guess to get to this, there's a lot of things that need to change politically and from a commissioning point of view that would allow us to do this. There's a willingness and there is a way to do it, but I think, from our point of view, it's about taking out the blockers and then creating.
So that would be, if we had enough time, I would say then we go to goals, tasks and action, but you really went there because you know exactly where you need to go in order to be able to make that happen. Yeah. So that's fantastic. Well done. And
we in case anybody wants to know, we're working with a funder in Staffordshire to try and pilot something like this. So if anybody's got any ideas, I'll leave a card over there or something. Just email me. It'd be really good to get some help on it. So we're trying to do this. Anyway. Thank you.
Right.
Well done. Thank you. Next one. Next reporter.
We have another reporter?
Mm,
Okay.
it's a hard act to follow, I agree. I agree. Who's going to represent the next group? Or did he just say everything that you were thinking? Yes.
No, we were saying that we were commenting on exactly the problem, that there's a lot of red tape involved. You need to ask
You need
Need
to
to come
talk
up
into
here.
the microphone. We don't,
Everything to
otherwise
say,
not
really.
recorded. Say it again, Daphne.
No, I just wanted to say that we were saying exactly that we found out that there were a lot of, different groups involved and different people, and to get them together is quite difficult, and also the red tape,
Yes.
You can't just get the information you want and all that. So that was sort of where we were at. We were
Yes.
just making a whole list of people that needed to be involved.
Great.
And it's hard to
Perfect.
get them and find
Which
them.
is what we do with Link, is we try and bring in all the stakeholders together to put together what's needed.
Yeah.
So,
And sometimes you don't even realize what's needed, because
Right,
you know
until
you're an
you-
expert in your own field, but you don't
Yes.
realize there's another problem. You
Right.
might recognize your own, the thing that you've been trained in,
yes,
but you don't necessarily recognize, there's
Right.
also suicidal problems,
Right.
until they're so
yes.
prominent that it's often too late.
Which is why we, yes,
Briefly as well about
Thank
the
you,
current
Daphne.
legislation
Yes.
about sharing and recording information and difficulties about sharing information.
confidentiality and yes,
Don't mention
yes.
about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we deal with the younger adolescents.
Absolutely.
Yes. It's a huge
We have the same problem. I've walked into court and found 5 different representatives of 5 different agencies, none of whom knew they existed in the family's life, but all got called to court on this case. And were repeating things, there were huge gaps in knowledge, so the right services weren't in place. It is a huge problem. And I think
Yeah.
you both hit on it. A lot of times it's because of the governmental red tape in whatever
Right.
area you are.
Anyone want to speak from
This group.
this group?
I mean, I was
Up, 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 up. Up, up. See, you stutter. Up, up, up.
Yeah, there is that already does exist. I mean, we have it with safeguarding. You can get everyone together in one room. You can get schools and social services and all the charities involved. You can do it. It does exist. And we were talking about the service I work for. We do that. We are one hub in the city. We are all attempt to be all encompassing. I mean, there are things we can't do, but we do have services in there for substances. We have the clinicians in there for actually help with the reduction plans. We have different kind of support groups for whatever is necessary. I mean, we're an adult service, so that's the only difference. But I think for us, what is just needed is more willingness, I guess, from community to come in. There's quite a resistance that we find with fear, I guess,
Yes.
of people, because we have a big block at the moment of people moving from child services to adult services. So people are accessing their local child services, they hit 18, and they look at our service and think, oh no, that's too scary, I don't want to go there. And they sort of see the people who come into our service and see them as quite, just quite kind of, quite terrifying, which is fair enough, because we link in a lot of people who have come out of prison and they kind of come to our service for their community support. And I think that's the big gap that I notice.
So you've
Is how to
identified
find that.
something very different, which is that transition from one age group to another, from one service to another, and how to create the bridges. It's terrific. I mean, you've all come up with amazing, amazing things. I would love to have you organizing a community. You'd really do it well. Okay, done.
So we talk about what communities can do, and this is just an overview: holding community meetings, creating social groups. We talked about disconnection, the importance of connection earlier, expanding community services, holding community-wide events, and reaching out to neighbors. Whoops, I also found another one, which is worship together. We're going to talk about some of the tools, review tools, and some of the additional tools that are available to help you do this work. The maps that we use in transitional therapy include various transitional maps, transitional genogram. So in one of the sessions, we looked at genograms in terms of culture, geography, spirituality, relationships, and religion. Transitional field map, which
we get
Judith
to
is
do
going
now.
to do next. We did the transitional checkerboard with the various generations. Positive and negative timelines. Historical maps and stories. And family life cycle, which you saw that we used, as well as looking at themes, strengths, and resources, and hierarchies. So,
Oh, okay. And geographic maps.
we didn't have that in.
No, we also use geographic maps. One of the communities that I worked in, we had the workers was a social services, Catholic social services for all the inner city communities in a city in the United States. There were 400 social workers and 150 paraprofessionals. And we had them walk the streets in each of their service areas. What had happened was several of them had to have escorts to get from their cars to the office and back from the office to the car. And they were literally seeing their clients from behind bars because of the intensity of murders and deaths in the inner cities. And they walked the streets and took photographs of every community, and then created hanging mobiles of the photographs, so you could walk through these cities looking at what was happening on every street corner. And by doing that, they met all the resources in the community and were able to bring them together in small neighborhoods. And within a year, they got rid of all the drug dealers. The house burnings stopped, and they went together with everybody. In the beginning, there were funerals every week, and slowly those funerals decreased and the community started to build. So this is a transitional field map, and we will draw it with a family or with a community, just like a snail shell, a circular spiral with each level leading into the next. And it's useful for families, it's useful for communities, it's useful for social systems. So if we think biopsychosocial, as we did on that earlier one, you've got your individual biological system, psychosocial, family and intimate support system, extended natural support system. Do you know the difference between a natural support system and an artificial or ancillary support system? Okay, the natural support system are the people that we're in touch with on a day-to-day basis when things are going well. So family, neighborhood, who else would be in a natural support system? Friends, colleagues, teachers, sports coaches, primary care provider. Specialty hospitals would be ancillary, only coming into use when they're needed. When we're working in prevention, we're in the natural support system. When we start working in therapy and with problems, we become artificial or ancillary support system. And it takes 5 members of the ancillary or support system to replace 1 member of this natural support system. So when we see somebody or a community where there are a huge number of organizations, NGOs coming in, or a family where there are a lot of therapists, a lot of professionals, we know that something is missing from the natural support system. So our job is to help repopulate the natural support system, whether it's a family, a school, a community. Okay? And all of that is embedded within our cultural system, our language, beliefs, heritage, and that within the ecosystems, the natural world, geology, geography, what's happening with global warming or climate change and so on, war. So when we're planning to enter a system, a community, a service, here you are looking at how do you impact government, how do you impact the commissioner to start getting things integrated. So what we need to do, this is the pyramid of prevention and intervention planning. So what we need to be doing is permeate the entire pyramid. And the pyramid could have at the top the people with the most skills, the most power, or it could have at the top, this could be at the top, the larger population, the people who are getting together, like the community in Romania who got together to bring about change. Argentina went the other way. It was our call came from a university, the Fulbright Commission, the head of the Minister of Health, and the Director of Addiction Services. So the call can come from anywhere. But what we need in order to intervene, we have to have knowledge of what's going on in that whole community, authority, and we have to have mission and be in touch with change makers. We need to look for the special skills and the leadership, and concurrently the context and the neighborhood, so that we really understand and we're able to motivate our community, family and community links to permeate the whole system. And those links can start anywhere. But then we have to plan, how do we get across the board? And what we need, the mechanism, is motivation, support, and before we can do anything, invitation and permission. And this is all, in addition to this, if you go to our website, there's a whole section on community resilience with outline details. A lot of people around the world have used linked community resilience just from the publications. So you're welcome to, I've got my business cards out there if you want to go to the website and get the publications. So what can we do? Recognize prevailing community pressures, understand the current cultural norms, avoid judgmental language, create and cultivate tolerance. That's one of the hardest things to do, is tolerance across the systems. A robust referral network, focusing on goals, not problems, collaborating with colleagues and families and community, know when to refer, when to delegate, who to involve in a community intervention, and when to report problem behavior, whether it's at an individual level or whether it's an entire service or a component of the community that's undermining the rest of the community. So just to give you, thanks. Just to give you an example of how the Transitional Field Map can be used in a community. I was called into New York the day after September 11, the New York September 11, not the Chilean one. And so here's a transitional field map done by a community. This was done by the Lower Manhattan community. So it'll be a whole lot easier if you get this off the publication, because it's right there and it's much more legible. You're welcome to photograph it, but so if we look at this now in detail, so this, instead of being a family, which is what we were working with earlier, you've still got each of the individuals, right? We talked about the individuals as the unit of resilience for the family. So we've got the individuals, then we have the families, and then we have that whole community. So biological organism, what do you think was happening with those people in Lower Manhattan? biologically. 30%, there was a 33% increase in the rate of cardiac arrhythmias. There was a 45% increase in lung disease. Biologically, that event impacted everybody. People with heart attacks had heart attacks. People with asthma, because the air was polluted, developed, right? The stress brought on diabetic attacks. So the biological response is also really important. And then we have the psychosocial system with that response: grief, loss, impaired meaning, affective response, cognitive responses, relational responses. I remember that morning, before I was calling two of my kids lived in Manhattan. One of them worked right there near the trade centers. He was fine, but it took all day before I could reach them. And thinking about people right there. And that impacts identity, self-image. What are their roles, their sense of time? How does their personality play into it? Their level of integration into that community and their coping skills. So this can be used for the family. It can also be used in a community setting. And then we look at the extended support system. With families, if you see a whole bunch of people in as therapists and social services, and often the law, and very few people in here, we know that 5 to 1, we need to start looking at who belongs in here and working with them to start, I'll use felted pen and have them start writing the people who are, help them, who are their neighbors, who are they connected with. And in a situation like this, where are the support systems? Where are the services? And so then we're looking at the local corporation, prevention, self-help, church, congregational units, public health agencies, schools, academic institutions, special interest groups, neighborhood, communities, groups and agencies, health insurance, colleagues, community rituals, friends, media, lawyers, law enforcement, first responders. All of those would come in. And then we look at the ancillary and artificial support system, the hospitals, medical specialties, emergency systems, and psychotherapists, psychiatric services, judicial systems, charities that only come in when there's a problem, social welfare, and all of that embedded in what is the culture of that group. Are there, like Lower Manhattan, there were multiple cultures. We had to consider all of them and make sure that their conceptual systems, philosophy, worldviews, history, spiritual beliefs, communication were all included. And of course, how you proceed depends on the economics, the physical resources, and so on. And all of that is embedded in the ecosystem, climate, what's going on geologically. If we look at what happened with, what happens with tsunamis, what's going on with the natural disasters and resources. So it's a very useful map that allows us to look at the biological, the individual and family responses, community response, and embedded within that what you were all talking about, what are the prevailing policies, procedures, guidelines and regulations that are there or that may need changing. And then the explanations, metaphors, and meanings, and what's going on at a global political level. So this was another map that we use where we take that transitional field map and break it down into its different levels. So the systemic level, biopsychosocial, cultural, spiritual, and then the event and how that impacts at each level. The protective factors are resources and resiliency across every level of individual, family, community support. What are the symbols and how are we interpreting our stories? Can we rewrite the story from a positive perspective? How do we look at it through a resilience lens rather than a vulnerability lens? And that's often the very hardest thing to do. And then what are we doing by way of our reactions? Can we look at our problematic reactions as a way of changing the way we respond, and also what we need to deal with in our, when you've got all your resources together, as you did so beautifully in your groups, how are you going to use those to meet these needs? And then interventions and preventions at each of these levels, right? The systemic level, the biological, with pharmacology, mind, body, spirit practices, physical self-care, at the psychological level with counseling, stress-relieving interventions, post-traumatic growth, right? All of these are recreational, physical, artistic activities. And then when in the social system, how do you mobilize the families, the groups, networks of counseling and therapy, building on long-term prevention and organizing community forums, enhancing social connectedness for communication, problem solving, and resource building. Changing our cultural belief system from vulnerability to resilience with facilitation of new rituals and practices focused on communal grieving, revitalization, conciliation, cultural legacy and mission, and cleanup of the environment, planning for reconstruction. So what I'd like is to have you back in your groups and think about what you had brought together for your adolescent, suicidal, substance abusing youngster, and how might you use these two maps? Which one do you want? This one, I think, is easier. Okay. So about 5 minutes back in your groups. One comment from each group about how you used the map or what you discovered with the map with your adolescent.
We discovered that it's pretty much, bar maybe one or two things that don't apply, it's pretty much the same system.
So the same system that one's using for the community that one's using for the adolescent. So doing the map actually helps one plan the work with the individuals and the families that you're treating in your centers, as well as applying to how you want to intervene across the community. Wonderful. Any other discoveries from other groups? The same thing? Wonderful. Yeah. So, and the same with this map. You had the same experience with this one, where you can go through at the individual levels or go through at the community level. Terrific. Or the family level. So how can we serve as a resource for our community? Can we serve as natural change agents or links to expand existing services, right? And you've all come up with amazing ideas. Any other thoughts as we get ready to close? You've got some ideas about how you want to go back to that commissioner. Good. It's pretty much what we do when we want to bring about change. That's the whole process. Yeah. So we talked about using a 3-stage process to empower the community and reduce long-term professional involvement. Once you get the whole community together, you're going to be able to impact that commissioner. So community comes together to share history, traditions, and the current situation, which you'll be doing on that map, or you'll be doing it with them using all of those maps, right? Select community links, and you now know how to select them. You want to avoid your spurious leaders. You want to help the community identify people who are not caught in any one or other coalition and aren't going to swing people to one or other pole. Because if you have them as your links, what's going to happen to the community's wishes? Disregarded, yeah. And then you're going to identify your goals and prioritize them, starting with the easiest or the hardest. Easiest goal first, breaking it into small workable tasks, and then being able to withdraw once the community has taken over the process. It's all about Ubuntu. So any thoughts, comments before we... Yes, Daphne.
It's easier with certain issues than others.
Okay.
So what I mean is, I'm sure community will come together easier to help when a disaster struck, like 9/11.
Exactly.
And I'm sure there are topics that are not very sexy, like, I don't know, mental health, or,
HIV, AIDS,
whatever.
the things that carry stigma.
Exactly. So,
Yes.
I'm sure it's easier, let's say, to find
Yes.
people, communities, leaders wanting to help and wanting to, in those topics than in others where
Yes.
where it might be even more needed because it's so
Right.
overlooked and
Yeah.
It's maybe harder, but it's definitely doable.
Yeah.
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 You know, I
yeah,
mean,
and more needed.
it's,
Well, and if we go back to the original Romanian example, it's a whole lot easier to bring together the people who are in trouble than it is to bring together those with resources who may not want to share. So that's why it's really critical to find those bridges that will expand into the communities that are able to help, rather than just getting caught where the problems abound. Yeah. Yeah, very important point, Daphne. Thank you. Other thoughts, ideas? You're all going to go back and work in your communities and change the world. Thank you.
Email us, and thank you for sticking.
You've been amazing.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you for hanging in there for so long. It's wonderful. Really appreciate it.